Good morning. Welcome back to the Celtic Way. I am your host, John McGinley. I'm joined by Tony Haggerty. We're here to chat through all the latest Celtic news and events of the past few days. Tony, whatever you'd like to chat about. I mean, there's not too much going on at Celtic at the moment. That's what we have to say. It's a bit of a slow wait for these improvements that we're waiting to Brendan Rodgers' squad.
Yes, get a Delamitri song playing in my head. Nothing ever happens. Nothing happens at all. Needle returns to the start of the song. Yeah,
Things must be bad if you've got a Delamitri song stuck in your
yeah,
head.
exactly, John. That's how bad it's got. Yeah, listen, it's a slow burner, isn't it? In terms of Celtic and players, it always is. They always do this to Celtic supporters every year. I think the only time they felt really comfortable was when Ange Postecoglou came in and signed a raft of players very early in the window, didn't he? And everybody was happy, and they sort of thought it was a sea change in the way Celtic were doing business. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of links with players, but and still nothing concrete in terms of players coming in the door. Lots of links with players going out the door as well. But it's a typical Celtic transfer window, John, isn't it?
It seems that way at the moment. We'll chat a bit more about that in a minute. It is an Adidas kit release day, Tony. If that kind of things excite you, Celtic have released their away kit for the coming season. There seems to be a lot of merch coming out from the Adidas camp this year as part of Celtic's obviously progression to this kind of elite club status. There's just merch after merch after merch. Lots of sales, trying to drive up those merchandise sales, which, as we know, are worth north of £30 million a year to Celtic. So it's an important tranche of the club business. When all the kits and all the new merch is coming out, within this context of supporters might not be too happy with some of the summer business being done so far, it does create this kind of weird juxtaposition, doesn't it, between promoting something that fans should buy and then fans feeling a little bit aggrieved that the club aren't buying what they should be buying.
John, I think Celtic need to read the room in this one. Asking fans to shell out again for another away kit, and also lots of fans they really feel strongly about the fact that there is no the Newcastle game is not free in their season book. I believe it's £25 for a ticket for that, and you have to take their thoughts into consideration. You can't just be unleashing merch after merch after merch and say, look, here's what you can buy, because the merchandise, Adidas merchandise, isn't cheap, John. There's the pictures there. Regardless of what you think of the strip or not, if you like it, you're going to buy it. But these things cost money, and I'm with the fans on this one, especially this week, asking them to fork out for that, and then asking them to fork out for a friendly, which was normally included in the season book in the past. I think it's a bit much, especially when you don't see it being reinvested in terms of players coming in. That's what's really annoying the Celtic fans at this minute. But yeah, there just seems to be a plethora of Adidas merchandise come out, and it's hard. You can't keep going back to that well, because fans are like everything else, John. They don't have a bottomless pit of money, unlike the club. At times.
It feels like Celtic summer just needs a bit of a spark, doesn't it? It needs something to kind of make everyone feel alive again and really excited about the new season. I don't think we've quite had that yet. In terms of what form that would take, a new Brendan Rodgers contract or a new marquee signing, something of that ilk would start to get people really excited about the season ahead again. Not that I'm not expecting a disastrous season for Celtic ahead by any means. That's just not the way. It's been pretty. The thing about these Celtic summers is that I don't think they're either disastrous or amazing. It's kind of just somewhere in the middle. It's a little bit uninspiring. I think Celtic fans are looking for that inspiration this year, especially just the manner of the way the Scottish Premiership was won last year. The interest did kind of flag towards the end of the season. I think Celtic supporters need them energised again, and really the onus is on the club to do that. It's, as far as I'm concerned, and delivering something that the fans truly want and are truly excited about. And I don't think supporters are asking for too much. They're genuinely just asking for what Brendan Rodgers has publicly stated Celtic need, as in a new starting striker, a new winger to replace Nicholas Kuhn, Brendan Rodgers is saying this publicly. This isn't fans moaning about this on a message board. This is what the Celtic squad needs. And with the resources that Celtic have, I don't know. I'm of the opinion that Celtic could be doing more to kind of deliver what is actually needed here.
Yeah, without a doubt, John. And if the manager's saying that, then you have to listen to the manager, don't you? Or do they? There's all this kind of talk about fans being entitled and stuff like that. It's nowhere near that. Celtic fans are really entitled to expect signings to come in. The manager's entitled to expect signings to come in. My goodness, he's earned that right to ask the board for money for new players. He said himself, doesn't need a revamp or a total overhaul, just needs refreshed. And I think the Celtic fans, as you rightfully said there, I don't think the signings that have come in have given them that lift. There's been no marquee signing yet to say, right, we mean business, let's go. And as you and I have alluded to many times, we've been talking about it since the Scottish Cup final result. The Celtic ended the season in a downer. I've not seen too much to lift us out of that downer at this minute in time. And we've been banging on about how important these Champions League qualifiers are, John. And I'm not, as I said yesterday, I'm not too perturbed and not too worried yet. But they have to start to prepare for these. Because I get back to it, they're season defining. And, we were talking in a group chat yesterday. If Celtic come a cropper in this Champions League qualifier, what's the mood music going to be like then? Be worse than Delamici, won't it?
Well, I'm not sure it gets worse than that, Tony, as for my personal tastes. Listen, I think the day after, or the couple of days after the Bayern, we went out the Champions League to Bayern, which Celtic did really well in that tie, the competitive tie, and it felt good. Celtic's place in Europe felt good at that moment. But I'm sure that the days after, if not the day after, we said on this show, the most important Celtic game on the horizon now this year is this Champions League qualifying tie. And that was months ago. And so, it's not a secret that these games are coming up. It's just over a month until they happen. Again, it's one of those ones you don't want to prejudge it too much and go too two-footed on everything, because we all know that a couple of good signings will change the perception of everything around this summer, and it will change the mindset of the sport and what we're looking forward to, etc. But it's undeniable that as it stands right now, I don't think Celtic squad is in a position that we need it to be for these Champions League qualifiers. Because as Brendan Rodgers has said, we lost Kyogo in January, we lost Nicholas Kuhn. Jota's out until next year. There's a need here in that attacking area of the pitch, and that's before you even think about the defence. And I actually think the defence is a big priority this summer too. So it's there's a lot of work to be done. We know there's a lot of work to be done, and we want to see Celtic get on with the task of getting that work done. Just a short update on Shinji Yamada. So Japan will play their last game in this East Asian Cup later this morning. I think the kickoff's 11:30 this morning. Shinji Yamada didn't play at the weekend, but the expectation is that after Japan complete their business this morning, that Shinji Yamada will be on his way to the UK to go through the formalities of his signing with Celtic. So that will be one signing in the door. Depending on your viewpoint, you'll be enthused about that or not. I don't think, though, if I'm being brutally honest, I don't know if Shinji Yamada's the spark that we're thinking of in terms of bringing this summer alive. I think we need a bit more. We need Celtic to relax the purse strings a little bit, Tony. And someone made a point here. Now there's a column up from Stephen McGowan on CelticWay.co.uk. It's also on the Herald. It was in the Herald yesterday, saying the Stephen McGowan article was right. What is the point in stockpiling cash just to hand a large chunk of it to HMRC? That's kind of my problem with it, Tony. When you have these much cash reserves, £70 million or so in the bank, it actually doesn't make business sense to hold on to it, because you're paying more tax, and you're not utilizing cash in the environment that it was generated. So things become more expensive over time. So you can't just sit on a stockpile of cash and just expect everything to be okay. You've got to utilize it to strengthen the club, to strengthen the squad, to strengthen the kind of the infrastructure around the club too. And I know they've spent a lot of money on Barrowfield and bringing that training ground up to scratch, but I don't think that's going to have any tangible first team benefits. There's a question of are Celtic doing enough? And I think for a lot of supporters, the answer to that question is no.
Correct. I mean, listen, John, as it stands, Celtic are not ready for the Champions League qualifiers. I qualify that by saying there is time to get themselves ready. I'm not panicking yet, but if this drags on for, say, another week or so, I think Celtic supporters will start to panic and think that they're not going to be ready and be prepared. So what is the hold up here, John? Because the money is there, and are they just refusing to pay exorbitant fees for players? See, if that's the case, then they should come out and tell the supporters. I think one of the commenters said earlier that the unique part of Celtic is the supporters. It is, and they don't ask for much, but when you're seeing, when you're reading that they have £70 million in cash reserves, I don't think it's too much to ask, as you say, to loosen those purse strings and bring in the players that they desperately need. A left-sided centre-back, a centre-forward, a winger. For me, I still think we need an enforcer in the midfield. 4 players, John. Now, it's up to the scouting departments to bring in the players that you think would fit that bill. But, I'm with you. I think the defence needs address immediately. Because they're not ready for the Champions League. Yesterday I would address that, but that's just me. And I guess fans are idealists. I'm always saying that I'm the biggest romanticist out there with Celtic, and every manager's always 2 players short of the ideal team. But at this moment in time, I think Celtic are 4 players short of just being decent in the Champions League. And and that's the kind of refresh that I want. You're not talking about overhauling everything, but they need certain players in key positions to make sure that they are competitive in the Champions League, and this qualifier won't present any real significant problems. But at this moment in time, I'm getting a bit wary of that it will present a significant problem regardless of who you draw.
Yeah. Well, Pete McGee sums up here. He says, no Jota, no Kyogo, no Kun. CCV injury suspect, AJ injury suspect, Trusty dodgy, Scales dodgy. Are we stronger than last season? No way, Jose. Oh dear, you're giving me the fear. There is an element of, are we an emotional support? Are we losing the run of ourselves? What is the opposite viewpoint here, Tony? Because I sense sometimes when you kind of say, well, we'll just wait and see. There's a lot of people saying Celtic should be doing more. When you say Celtic are doing more, there's a lot of people saying, oh, well, we need to wait and see. Is there somewhere in the middle here that we can try and navigate? Or is it time to just be like, Celtic, what's the story here?
Yeah, but I think, John, last year was the perfect example of what could be achieved in the Champions League. Came so close to knocking Bayern out in Germany. And you want to strengthen that position, say, okay, can we go further? Here's how we can take it further. And what we've just outlined there is how Celtic can possibly take it a stage further. But there just seems to be a kind of, a lethargy about Celtic when it comes to transfers and a serious inertia. And I think that worries supporters. We're not asking them to spend 50 million quid, John, of that 70 million, but we're asking them to give a decent proportion and size to the manager, because I believe he's earned that. And if there's a problem here with doing that, then I believe a bit more open and honest communication with the supporters on that regard. Mm. Is it because the manager's not refusing, but hasn't committed beyond his 3rd year? Is that the case? Do they feel they've got bang for their buck with the money that he spent so far? Trusty, Idah and Engels, is that the reason?
Well, listen, Tony, what happens is, so because all the communication coming out of Celtic comes through Brendan Rodgers, then people are naturally going to find angles around what Rodgers is saying, because he's the only one saying anything. When have we ever heard from Paul Tisdale? When was the last time we heard from Michael Nicholson? These guys are involved in Celtic transfers, both in the scouting or in the negotiation of talent. Have we heard from these guys at all? No, we haven't. So everything's coming through the viewpoint of Brendan Rodgers, and that can create narratives for the support, just by a natural byproduct of you're only getting it from one person who has his own interests within Celtic. He wants that squad to be as strong as possible, so he's going to be saying that at all times. And it naturally creates these talking points about, is Brendan Rodgers happy? Is it aligned with the strategy of the club, etc., etc.? That communication from Celtic is, I'm sorry to say, it's absolutely shocking. Like, it's terrible. The communication and the PR from Celtic is steps below multiple teams across Scotland now, not just in Scotland, but if you look across the UK and Europe, Celtic's communication and PR are levels below, frankly. I have to be honest with that. And I think the communication coming from the club, if it was better and more structured, and I'm not, this isn't me criticising the media team at Celtic, I think this comes from the top. It's a communication strategy of not having your executives and having your senior personnel at the club communicate directly with the support. I think that harms trust between the hierarchy at the club and the support, and it leaves a vacuum of information that gets filled by speculation, and that's genuinely just what happens. So we need that communication from the club to be far better, I would suggest.
Without a doubt, John, and also I banged on about it a long time. You want to be seen as an elite level club, you have to conduct your business as such. And Celtic, whenever a transfer window comes along, they revert to a small-minded club. They just don't say anything. Teams, lots of teams go out and they're linked with a player, they sign them the next day. Celtic is always protracted, it drags on, whatever. They just fail to act like the elite level club that you and I think that they should. And I agree wholeheartedly that a lot of that comes from the top. And so what happens is, as you say, the manager speaks, people connect dots, join lines, and I've always said you need to listen to what he's saying. But when a manager's telling you he hasn't replaced Kyogo, and he needs to replace Nicholas Kuhn, and he was talking about the defence as well. That is basically him saying, "This is what I need. This is what's required to do anything like they did last season at that elite level." And I don't know what's happening here in terms of that, because if that's the case, that should have been sorted, John, by now. These guys should be integrating into the Celtic setup and getting ready and using the Sporting Lisbon games, because it's a ramp up in opposition, and Newcastle games and the Como Cup to really bed themselves in for the season ahead and then the qualifiers. That's what worries me. It's the whole lack of forward planning, because they might well produce a couple of marquee signings, John, further down the line. But you're talking about the timescale, aren't you? To really integrate yourself into the team, be settled, and be ready for a tie of that magnitude. Because it doesn't matter who Celtic draw, John, there is jeopardy there.
Yeah. So the comment here, Henrik McLarson's asking, what's the worst and best case scenarios in terms of what teams we could get for this qualifier? So Celtic will be seeded, as we know, everyone knows that. The kind of teams we could face, it's looking like a team of the calibre of Slovan Bratislava. Now, I know Celtic comfortably took care of Slovan Bratislava last season. They would be one of the teams potentially in the mix. FC Basel, another team potentially in the mix. Karabag and Sturm Graz, Maccabi Tel Aviv. Those are the kind of projected unseeded teams in the draw. So it would be one of those 5 teams theoretically, but some of those teams also have to come through the qualifying process in earlier rounds, which may shake that up a little bit. FC Basel and Sturm Graz are definitely into the playoff round and will be potential opponents, one of those 2 of those 5 teams that Celtic can face. So what you think, that's a good standard of opposition, Tony. I would liken it to, a tough Europa League fixture or a Champions League fixture that you would expect Celtic to take care of if they have the right squad in place and if they're properly, prepared for it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, John, is that you look at those ties and they will pose problems, right? Significant problems, but, the smart money's on Celtic to get through a tie against that opposition. But a couple of names in there that, you probably wouldn't want, everybody going on off in Bratislava because of what happened in that Champions League game. Yep, totally get that. That seems fine. But, Basel knocked Celtic out of the Champions League. Granted, they dropped into the FA Cup and all the way to Seville, but and I'm not saying that's the Basel team of old, but still a team that gave you problems. There's lots of people talking about Maccabi Tel Aviv as well. Might be logistical problems around that too. You don't know. So, listen, I just feel in order to give Celtic every chance of qualifying, then they need. I wish they would have had been a bit more prepared up until now. That's not to say that they won't be prepared, but it's just the time element now, John. For me, the clock is ticking down on that qualifiers coming in, and I don't see too much to get excited about at the minute in terms of signings coming in and in terms of Celtic's preparation. I am trusting the manager and I'm listening to what he's saying, and I'm hoping those upstairs are also listening to what he's saying and grant him his wishes and give him what he wants. Because if it goes for another, say if we're sitting here this time next week, John, or in 10 days' time, and no one else has come in the door, I think I'll be a bit more agitated and worried and a bit more animated. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt thus far, but I think that level of patience from most supporters is gradually getting exhausted, isn't it?
A little bit, I would suggest. Yeah, it does feel like a gradual erosion. I think Celtic supporters in general, the vast majority, there's always a loud minority who will find fault with things, but I think the majority of the sport, are happy to give the club the benefit of the doubt in many ways. And just look at the season ticket sales. I mean, the season tickets sold out just, very quickly. There's no sense that there's a dip in enthusiasm for actually going to Celtic matches and attending Celtic matches. That is the back, and that is the goodwill from the support. Is putting their hand in their wallet and weighing in again. So a bit of complaining after that, I think, is only a result of actually what they're seeing with their own eyes. It's not a result of expecting too much. I think that's what I would say on that too.
Without a doubt, I don't think the Celtic fans do expect too much, John, because whenever they're asked to, come up trumps with season tickets and even the buying of the merchandise, Celtic supporters always do it. Hand over fist, they produce their money. Welsh Paul, there you go. I'm not infallible, Paul. I did say that there is time to turn it all around and might feel a bit better about ourselves this time next week or whenever. But yeah, just slight concerns for me, John, at this minute in time. But the Celtic supporters, to a man, woman, and child, they always back the club. But there are times when you just say there's a vocal minority who say, right, wait a minute, what is that? What is actually happening here? Can you communicate and can you tell us? And we go through this transfer window rigmarole every time, don't we? The Ange Postecoglou window was the smoothest that we've had in many a year, and everybody contrast that to how you felt when all of that was happening, John. The manager was bringing in players that he had knowledge of, and you trusted them, despite the fact we maybe hadn't heard of them. So again, Shinji Yamada, a player that maybe not be too familiar to Celtic supporters, but can he come in and hit the ground running and be a difference? Maybe he could, but at this moment in time, it's not the one that gets the juices flowing, is it? The Celtic fans are still waiting for that one to say, right, here we go. We're back in business, we're back in the ball game. And with this Champions League qualifier looming on the horizon, that's just my concern. I can see that coming over the hill, and it's kind of worrying me, So,
yeah, I mean, if I'm looking at it and someone's asking me, are you happy with the Shinji Yamada signing? I'm like, well, yeah, to an extent. He did well in J League last year. If someone's asking me, are you expecting Shinji Yamada to come in and be a difference maker in the Champions League qualifier? I'm thinking probably not. He's never played in Europe before. We know it's a contrast. We know that these players can take time to settle. It can be difficult. So there's a bit of both there for me. Adam Idah talking overnight from the training camp in Portugal, asked whether he could get closer towards 30 goals this season. He said, yeah, 100%. I said it last season. The more minutes I play, the more goals I'm going to score. And it's a fact. I scored 20 goals with the minutes I've played, which is really good. So I'm sure the more minutes I play, I'll score more goals. And I'm confident enough in myself that I can get to that. It's only a benchmark, so hopefully I can do it next season. So where do you stand with Adam Idah at the moment? 21 goals last season, I think, in total. You said 20 there. I think it was 21 in total. How are you feeling about his first full season at Celtic? And do you have expectations that he can go and now push on? I said it multiple times last season. I liked Idah as an impact substitute. I think he's effective in that role. Every time, or more often than not, when he's actually started for Celtic, I felt like he's struggled a little bit to get into the rhythm of the game, and that's really the next step I would be looking for from him. Are you expecting that from him over the coming year?
First and foremost, I love the fact that he said that. He's confident, he backs himself. Okay then, go and do it. Talk's cheap, isn't it? I think he's had his season, he's bedding in season, call it what you like. His numbers were decent for his minutes on the park. If that's the way Idah feels and that's what he's telling the manager, okay. If the manager unleashes him, John, then he has to do it. I've been one of Idah's biggest supporters for that very reason. And I thought he's had some games where you've looked at him and thought, you know what, if it all comes together, you could be that man. Villa away, in particular for me, when he helped drag Celtic back in a game that looked to be slipping away from them. And he said other performances like that. But most of the time, as you say, that impact sub nature to his game, I think he has to shrug that off, John. If he really is going to be Celtic's leading number 9, go and score 30 goals. Because if he scores 30 goals, Celtic will search the title, no problem. And if he also does it on the Champions League stage, then they'll claim a few scalps and get a few results. Granted, I think sometimes they don't play Idah's strengths. I liked what I saw from Nygren. That's an Idah goal for me, John. Right? So you turn a man, you put it in that area. See, if Idah's not there, then I'm asking questions. But he bundled it home, and I know it's only a training game, but it's the behaviours, John, I want to see. That's something that they've worked on. And I believe when you saw the unique angle, Callum McGregor was shouting about that, wasn't he? Good pass, good movement, good stuff, all that kind of thing. So that's what I want to see, John. That's what I want to see from Idah. I know he's a confident boy, and he said it a lot that he'll score goals, but you need to get the balls in the areas for him to score goals. And I think that's where he struggled. And I think that's where Celtic have struggled. So if Nygren is a player that can help facilitate that, then I think Idah will score maybe 30 goals this season. But you have to get the ball in the areas, because he's one of these players that, see, if he's not getting the ball in that area, he finds it hard to impact a game, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's where I think that's where a lot of the criticism of Idah has come from. It's not his fault, but he can be effective when you do the right things and you give him the right service. That's what I'm saying. Because he can run channels as well, but I think he's better up top, John, as an out-and-out centre-forward for me. That's again, and I'm hoping that Nygren is that kind of player. I mentioned the fact that when Nygren was brought in, the way people were talking about was a kind of Andy Tom vibe. Now, Andy Tom had the three amigos to sort of hit and bounce off and play off, so I'm hoping that Idah's one of those who can thrive off the likes of Nygren moving forward.
Listen, if Idah does get close to 30 goals this season, and I'm not suggesting he will or won't, that kind of thing will plays out. It's pointless prejudging. If Idah does get close to 30 goals, then I don't think you could argue with what he has contributed to Celtic since he signed. There's been a lot of chat and a lot of debate about whether Idah's good enough for Celtic. But if he does produce with consistency, which I think is the next big thing, and listen, Idah admits that himself. This is what he said about the knack for coming up with big goals and big moments, like you alluded to there, such as the Scottish Cup final the season before last, and obviously in the Champions League last year. He says, I think I've been like that in my whole career, to be honest. I've scored in a lot of big games, but now I want to kick forward and score in every other game. The big games are great to score in, but I want to be consistent now, and I think that's the big learning for me. I want to be the striker that plays every game and scores every game, every second game. It's not just about the one big game. You want to do it consistently, and I think that's where the biggest players are the best. So I think he knows what he needs to do at Celtic. It's whether he can convince Brendan Rodgers to be in that team every week, and he can find that consistency. I'd love to see Idah score consistently. That would be magic.
That's John. See the statement that you read out there. That's what the Celtic supporters expect from Adam Idah. and they want from Adam Idah. I don't think it's too much to expect that from him. He's a big, powerful guy, and I don't care about the price tag. Adam Idah doesn't set the price tag, so I think labelling that at the likes of him and Engels is unfair, right? These guys just come in, clubs pay what another club asks for a player and sign them, so that's fine. But he's just telling you there what you expect from him. I want him to get in there, and yeah, it's great that he scores in the big games, but that's been the major criticism from a lot of Celtic supporters. You might do it in big games, but you don't do it every game. And if he's cognizant of that and he's very much aware of it, then you're like to yourself, okay, you've had that kind of season where you scored that loan spell where you scored in the Scottish Cup, great striker's goal, followed it in. You've now had a season to really bed in and get yourself, your feet under the table and think to yourself, right, I know what this is about. I'm expecting a massive kick on from Adam Idah now. I really am, John. And as I say, I'm one of the ones who have defended him a lot because I do think his goals to minutes ratio on the park is very good. But now he has to show me exactly what he said there, because I'm confident he can score in big games. He's shown that. But I need him to score against. I need him to, the ones where you're eking out a 1-0, it's tight at Firth Park, something like that. I need him to do that. I need him to be the difference maker there. Or even if it's because he's shown he can score against Rangers, stuff like that. You're going to Pittodrie or something like that, and it might be tight. You're going to edge it. I want Adam Idah to be the main man in these situations, and the ones that you're having to grind out. And talk's cheap, as they say. If that's the case, then, as I said at the start when you read out his first thing, go and back that up, Adam. And then if he does that, every Celtic supporter will be very happy with him.
Well, what about this comment here, Tony? And as you know, opinions vary within the Celtic support. It's not one unit that thinks with a hive mind. So what about this from George Campbell? We need the manager who signed him to play him, not ask our board for another £10 million for another player and not play Idah. What do you make of that viewpoint? Is that fair?
I think there's an element of truth to that, yeah. But then I go back to it and I always say the manager watches him every day in training, doesn't he? So there's something there that the manager's not quite sure about, is there? He gets the nod for certain games and then he's the impact player in other games. And again, he's shown you what he can do. Celtic were second best at Ibrox. He came on and scored, didn't he? Got a goal out of nothing. That kind of thing. And by the way, that very underrated goal because the touch he took to shift it to his other foot was brilliant. And so that's where the Celtic supporters are kind of confused about Adam Idah because he's got a lot of things in his locker. His 2 goals at Villa were brilliant, right? He has all that in his locker. And then there are other times when he plays and he just doesn't impact it at all, John. So I think there's merit in that statement in terms of if Brendan Rodgers is fully convinced, as Adam Idah's convinced, that he's the man who'll score for Celtic this season, then why not? Why not say to him, right, you're my starting number 9, but I still think we need another number 9, John, to offer competition and also to rotate and freshen things up and play differently. But Adam Idah's certainly talking the talk there, and if Brendan gives him the nod, then he clearly knows he has to walk the walk, John, and do it.
And what do you make of speculation around Odsonne Edouard, Dennis Jameson? Good morning, everyone. French Eddie, could we possibly bring back another band member? Now, the source of this is it's a single French journalist, so I'm always of the opinion with these transfer stories, unless it starts to be corroborated by lots of other outlets, then you take everything with a little bit of a pinch of salt. So there was a report from a French journalist saying that Celtic are monitoring Odsonne Edouard's situation this summer. He's in a bit of a limbo in terms of his career. I think he's 27 now. For me, I often think it's something of a mistake to go back to a player, and apart from isolated incidents. Is Odsonne Edouard, would he be the answer for you in that position?
No, I think when it was rumoured the first time, myself and Ryan did the Odsonne Edouard or Adam Idah. And I think Ryan came down on Odsonne Edouard's side and I came down on Adam Idah's side because I said he represented the future. Odsonne Edouard was the past. Nothing in me shakes that belief. Still think that bringing back Edward would be a backward step. He had his time, we loved him for it, and he's maybe not been able to, find what he had at Celtic elsewhere through no fault of his own. But very few players do, John. They never get that or recapture that for him or score that many goals. You can talk about the level and all that. I get all that as well, but that I think a lot of people when they leave realise that they've left something pretty big. I'd be very surprised if Odsonne Edouard came back. Do I want him back? Is your original question? My answer would be no.
I think it's one of those ones that he's going to pop up every transfer window now, I think, until the end of time. And that's what everyone just needs to realise as well. It's one of those, it's going to become one of those transfer window regularities, I think. We've saw it with players in the past, and I think Celtic's links to Edouard will be consistent, even if there's little substance to it. Dennis Jameson also asks Balikwisha what's happening. Now, if you watched the show last week, I kind of caveated the Balikwisha stuff where, again, that was something coming from one source in Belgium. It wasn't corroborated by a wide number of sources, and so the fact that these reports that he's on his way to Celtic and he's going to sign imminently, I wasn't ever convinced to wholeheartedly by that, and I'm in the same camp again this week. Until that starts getting widely reported, then I wouldn't hold out too much hope for it. It's just one of those names again that consistently gets linked with Celtic because they popped up before, and so it has value to the people reporting this.
You mentioned Basel earlier on, John, and I was wondering what Hakim Yakin was doing, because that was one of those names that Celtic were going to sign forever, wasn't it? Hakim Yakin.
Well, do you remember when Romario was in the Celtic car park? 1994 or something?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, so fair many one from many, Stephen Fletcher was the other one, wasn't it? And there was all sorts of players, wasn't there? There was always a fullback as well, whose name escapes me.
Well, we had the David Ginola saga as well at one point.
David Ginola, yep, David Ginola. But there was a Czech fullback who, Kradlic or something.
Oh, yeah.
Always, yeah. The guys in the comments will probably remember that. But yeah, I think you can make a wonderful team out of the players that never signed for Celtic, John. We were linked over transfer windows. That'd be fun one day to do that. But yeah, I think Edouard's going to crop up time and time again, isn't he?
And listen, we've been a little bit moaning this morning, Tony, but I think for the most part we've tried to keep a positive outlook this summer without prejudging things too much. But I am starting to feel things changing a little bit in terms of the urgency of the situation, and getting a wee moan off our chest is good for the soul as well sometimes.
I don't think every moaning per se has just been realist, John. I think we're I think we're realists. We're not up in arms. We have given them, I would say, there's still plenty of time, to bring in marquee players and stuff like that, and per se. But I think you're right. I just think we're commenting on kind of lack of activity. I don't think that's unfair.
Yeah,
is it?
And I don't think so. And listen, if Celtic pull several blinders out the hat, we'll be the first to say, well done, Celtic. But it's really about seeing them follow through on what that's the thing about it for me, Tony, is everyone knows what Celtic need to do. Celtic know it, the sports know it, Brendan Rodgers knows it, Idah knows it. Everyone knows what Celtic need, and it just doesn't seem to be quite clicking into place. And yes, there's 6 weeks of the transfer window left. It's getting to the stage now where it would be good if the transfer window closed next week, because then maybe Celtic would do something.
I think also as well that there's some supporters' eyes on what's happening over the city. There's a buzzing hive of activity, isn't it? Because I'm not discussing the merits or otherwise of the players they're bringing in, but people are always have an eye on their rivals and stuff like that, and that's fair enough. I'm always of the opinion I don't particularly care what our rivals do. I'm always about what Celtic do. But I think people are kind of looking across and thinking, and it doesn't matter who they bring in. You work in the Bertie Hall premise, don't you? Can they play? And it's the same as Celtic players. The guys that are coming in, can they play? And if they can play and play to a high standard, then Celtic will do well. And that's always been the case for me in the way I approach things and look at things.
Well, I'm off to make an appointment with the football doctor and see what he's saying. Um,
Or I lie down.
yeah. Okay, right. Thanks for joining me this morning, Tony. Thanks for joining us in the live chat. Thanks in the comments below. Weigh in with your thoughts on the Celtic summer transfer window so far. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how the week progresses, Tony. Hopefully, it's good for all of us. We'll be back tomorrow morning. I think I'm on with Josh. Be chatting, the latest Celtic news, all the developments, and all the talking points as of tomorrow morning. So join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. Until then, see you later.